Hello everyone, this is Chase Pounds. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing about misperceptions about slavery, such as free blacks, free, slavery existing in the North. As I said in my previous video, as I was growing up in school, I didn't really know much about free blacks. My general perception was that all blacks were slaves. No, there were no free blacks in the North. And that was my general perception when I was in grade school and middle school. But by the time I got into high school, I started learning the free blacks. As I mentioned before, it was from the I learned I watched the I learned about free blacks was from watching the miniseries Roots. It was actually from a Christmas special called Roots the Gift that they show a free man on horseback, and that stood out was a free man that was riding on horseback that appeared to Kunta Kinte, and they show him bestly dressed in the attire that time period with the colonial pointed hat of the 18th century, and they sh- they show him proud and talk about how he's free, very confident man, despite the disgust from the white slave owners, which he ends up losing his freedom as he's caught as being part of an abolitionist for the Underground Railroad. That stood out. As I said, that scene stood out. It kind of made me curious about learning about free blacks, and as I learned that there were a lot of free blacks that existed in the North, or North, and they mostly some who had never been enslaved, who always were free, while those who were, you had some that were slaves at one point but escaped, fled to the north, fled to the north, which was primarily the system of the Underground Railroad, which was a system of helping secretly guide blacks from the north, clever method of escaping from the south to the north, and they mostly primarily fled to places such as Philadelphia, or Philadelphia, Ohio, free protected states that were free protected states. I also didn't know at one point that at one point in time slavery existed in the North. And that was existed in the North prior to the Revolutionary War. States that you think of as free, northern states that you think as states that you think as being of the North, or colonies, or slave-owning states such as New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Philadelphia, as well as even further north in Canada. It was a slave-holding country. I primarily learned about this from watching a documentary on the Underground Railroad that I actually owned. And at the beginning segment, it talks about slavery existing in the North. And that's actually one of the people experts being interviewed says makes a point by saying, usually you've been taught in school that slavery only existed in the South. That wasn't the case. It existed in the North, which I kind of agree with that. And when I was coming up in school, I never remember learning that slavery existed in the North probably at one point in time. And I have, and I have prior, I, and I also think that in early in early in old movies and TV shows, antebellum set movies often overlook this, I guess, kind of depicted as that way, as that slavery only existed in the South, such as in the movie Roots. Always, always meant, always, always, always discusses how Kunta Kinte is trying to run away to or try to escape to go north. The possibility that he could have been re-enslaved in the re-enslaved in the could have been re-enslaved in the north as well as his own country in Africa. And from my prior knowledge, slavery also, as I said, existed not only just in North America, but also in, well, from my knowledge, slavery also existed in other countries such as Canada, as well as in the Caribbean. I also knew slavery existed in the Caribbean, as well as overseas in England and in Africa. Africa, and it was only until after the revolution, after signing the Constitution, that many many northern states became free states. New York actually remained a slave state until 1827, which I didn't know about New York being a slave owning slave owning state. Also, didn't know that it was a slave owning. I also didn't know Washington D.C. was a slave. I also didn't know Washington D.C. was a slave-holding slave-holding town as well. It it, I did, which it was on the streets of the capital that they sold slaves. Many presidents that many presidents had owned were slave owners, such as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, slaveholders, which I didn't know about. And both of them were from Virginia, which was a slave-owning state. I don't really remember being taught about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson in class. That's that much, but they were slave owners. Abraham Lincoln may have been a slave owner, even though the contrary to, which is a misperception, that the common misperception is that Abraham Lincoln was against slavery and freed the slaves. Though he did sign the Emancipation Proclamation, he did not Now, he wasn't against the cause of slavery, but only ended slavery just to keep the North from splitting apart. To help in the war, the Civil War, the war between the states. Also not slavery was not just confined to just the black African race, but other races. Native Americans were almost set in, also almost forced into a type of slavery, while Native Americans in some territories of the U.S. owned slaves as well, held, held, held slaves as well. And Irish was said to be enslaved as well. So slavery went both ways with all the different races. So I think in slavery, and before the colonization of the United States, slavery existed in many other countries and was common practice. Though what made our slavery so common and stood out was because it was the first system to categorize someone by race, and the irony that it was built on the idea of freedom, the idea of all men are created equal, the idea of all men being created equal and freedom and equality, but yet we own slaves. And then it was a very brutal system. And that's some of the common misperceptions about slavery that I had. That's often it's not known about or not understood. I should say dispelling some of the myths about slavery. There's an interview about Chase Pounds. Stay tuned for the next video.